Hello, my name is Jessica Lyons. I am going to be talking about initiatives and referendums that occur in Arizona, and we're going to deep dive into them. So let's get started. So, as explained by McClory's Understanding the Arizona Constitution, Arizona's Constitution was built on a progressive era thought, believing that their government were controlled by corrupt party bosses, political machines, or political corrupt interests. This then led to the creation of a direct democracy. In this creation, certain procedures were established. Of them two of these procedures were initiatives and referendums. So during this presentation, I am going to explain each of them, how they are similar, but also how they're different, and how they are good for Arizona. Not only the good, but also the bad. I will also explain how both procedures support Arizona's direct democracy. So, what is an initiative? An initiative is a direct democracy process that allows citizens to draft changes to the state's constitution or statutes. So, then what is a referendum? Well, a referendum is also a process in a direct democracy. However, this procedure allows voters to accept or reject changes proposed by the legislature to the Constitution. A statutory referendum can be by petition by citizens or by the legislature on its own. According to the Arizona Secretary of State's office, there are specific procedures that must be followed to create an initiative or a referendum. First, we're going to talk about how to create an initiative. And first, you need to file a political committee through the Arizona State Secretary of State, or you can use an an existing committee to be your petition sponsor. Also, through the Arizona Secretary of State's office, one must file an application to receive a serial number for their initiative. There's a specific petition form that must be obtained at the Arizona Secretary of State's office. If you use an out-of-state or are paying someone to circulate your petition, they must also be registered at the Arizona Secretary of State's office. We are using the 2026 numbers that they have available to us. So, according to the Secretary of State's office in Arizona, 15% of qualified electors, if submitting an initiative to be amended to the Constitution, 50% of them must be qualified electors. This equates into 383,923 signatures, or you only need 10% of qualified electors if the initiative is for a statutory amendment. That number then is 255,949 certified signatures that must be collected from circulating the petitions. They must then be submitted by the deadline, which this year had been July 2nd. This final step then is for the Secretary of State or county recorders to to process the petition and verify the correct number of eligible signatures were collected. If this is achieved, the measures are then placed on the ballot. When allowed, there is a period of time for which you can give evidence in favor of the initiative or to reject or give an argument against that initiative. Referendums have a very similar procedure to follow, like the initiative measures. A political committee must be established through the Arizona Secretary of State's office, and an application must also be submitted for a serial number to be issued. There is a specific referendum petition which must be used. Circulators that are paid or are from out of state also must be registered with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. As of 2026, a referendum must collect a minimum of 5% of the number of votes cast in the last gubernatorial election, which this year that number is 127,975. The petitions must then be submitted by the deadline. The deadline for referendums are a little bit different. They must be before 90 days from the adjournment of the legislature from which the motion or bill has passed. The Secretary of State office and county recorders will then process the petition and ensure enough signatures were collected in order for the referendum to be placed on the ballot. As you may have heard, there are several things that are similar between initiatives and referendums. Likewise, there are quite a few differences. Both initiatives and referendums are ways that citizens participate in their direct democracy. In order to get an initiative or a referendum through, they go through the same process through the Arizona Secretary of State's office. Their differences come in first the premise of which they are used for, but are for different, similar reasons, but different premises. The initiatives are for citizens who want to submit an amendment for the state constitution or statutory amendment. The referendums are, the requirements are 15% of eligible signatures for an amendment and 10% for a statutory amendment. Referendums are for legislative bills and measures that have passed through the legislature. A citizen or a legislator can submit a referendum if they get 5% of the last gubernatorial votes and signatures, and it's submitted before 90 days after the adjournment of the legislature for which the bill or measure was passed. As with anything that requires decision making, there's good with the bad, and in other words, there's pros and there's cons. We're going to look at that now. And as per McClory, we will start with the cons. Get them out of the way, right? Citizens tend to write lengthy and very wordy and complex propositions that aren't necessarily written in correct legislature fashion. Citizens may also lack the appropriate knowledge or the long-term effects of a subject. For example, there have been initiatives that have been put forth about spending in the state. And lastly, out-of-staters may come into the state of Arizona, find backing, and push for something that is of a national agenda. On the other hand, proponents of direct democracy see initiatives and referendums as a way to have citizen checks and balances within the government. It also helps to foster engagement in all elections because people are vested in their governments and what is going on in their governments. And finally, it makes the legislature to be more responsive to the needs of their constituents. With direct democracy being of citizens, which can directly propose or reject laws and amendments, the Arizona Constitution, Article 5, Part 1, spells this out in explaining the initiatives and referendums which allows citizens to propose these amendments to the Constitution or to dissent measures passed by the legislature. By following the steps to petition for the changes by citizens, it keeps direct democracy alive and well in Arizona. This deep dive into initiatives and referendums, as explained in this presentation, should have given you a greater understanding of what they are, how they are different, and why they're important to keep direct democracy in place in Arizona.